house in Abu Dhabi Global Market. Good morning, my name is Linda Fitzallen. I'm the Registrar and CEO of ADGM Courts and one of your co-hosts of our 15th annual Viz Pre-Moot for MENA. Welcome to Abu Dhabi Global Market. I think many of you have been here before, and for those who have been in before, welcome back to the family. For those who are new to the jurisdiction, it's brilliant to have you here because ADGM and ADGM Courts, ADGM Academy, you'll hear from my wonderful colleague Hamad Al-Mazuri, who heads up the RA, the Registration Authority of Abu Dhabi Global Market, is that we feel very strongly about our support for this competition. You are the emerging brilliance of the legal world in the MENA region. And that means a lot to the rule of law and to transparency and to education and to just generally ensuring that the most wonderful progression that is going on in this region in the legal world exponentially grows. And that is something that is incredibly important to us. So welcome, you have a very big week ahead. It's going to be a week of highs, thrilling, exhilarating. You can't believe that it'll be as exciting as you're experiencing it. And there may be some of the not so highs, thrilling, and all of that. But the important part about it is that those ones, the sort of not so high ones, are really the best ones that you'll ever have, because they're the ones that you grow from. They're the ones that you learn from. They're the ones that you know, do you know what, that strategy? Not so good for next time. Or as Professor Brand and Robbie will tell you, probably nothing is never not so good as next time. Maybe it just didn't work that time. So never abandon something. Always remain true to what you think your strategy should be, but maybe it's just a matter of ensuring that you tweak it as you go along the way, and as you get experience, you know which one works for which situation. So that's probably enough from me at the moment. You'll hear from me right at the end, no more from me. But Hamad is on his way, but what we thought we would do is just welcome you a little bit more, see how you're feeling, where are you from, what are you looking forward to during the week, and I think probably most importantly is how we can support you along the way, because this is your week, this is not our week, it's your week, and you need to make the best of it, and you need as much support as you possibly can. And that's why we are here. So on that note, it's such a pleasure to welcome back Professor Brand and Robbie Juno. It's such a pleasure. They are our close family, our good friends. We've been working together for quite a few years now, and we look forward to this time every year. It's just the best way to start a year. So on that note, let me pass over to Professor Brand to continue possibly in a more formal way, but have the best time. Make sure you have fun. Don't forget that's also why you're here. And on that note, Professor Brand, wonderful to have you.
When you listen to Linda, you understand why we're so happy to be working with ADGM. This is a wonderful facility, but it's an even better group of people to be helping us, and all of the partners here. So we're not on the agenda yet. This is like in the United States when you have TV shows. Before the TV show comes on, you have somebody come on and warm up the audience, right? So that they'll cheer properly and laugh at the right times and clap a lot. And so let's try that. No. Hey, all right. But as Linda said, this is your show, and so let's remind ourselves before we get into the formal part, who's here. All right. So and we're not sure which teams are here yet. There's some that are coming in. I'm not sure if some that still have visa problems, but UAE University. Right? Yeah. Hey, up there.
Come down here.
Oh, now. in the United States, in law school class, if you sit in the back, you're the first one to get called upon.
Yeah,
So,
stand up and come down.
yeah.
Stand up and come down here to the main section.
yeah, and here's the thing. You're preparing to become lawyers, okay? The lawyers in the front row will be able to bill $1,000 an hour. The lawyers in the middle will be able to bill $500 an hour. The lawyers in the back will be able to bill $50 an hour. Think about that, all right? So come on down. Birmingham University, I think, is here, right? No, Birmingham is coming in Tuesday. Institute of Energy Law Studies at the University of Tehran. Is here, hey, all right. Shiraz University, not here yet. Al Faisal University is here. Yeah. Prince Sultan. Okay. New York University, Abu Dhabi is here. All right. St. Joseph's University from Beirut. All right. Good. Now there's a second team from the Institute of Energy Law Studies from Tehran, but both teams are here? Both teams. Okay. One is East and one is okay. All right. American University of Central Asia is here. All right. Ruhr University Bochum in Germany. Okay. Hamad bin Khalifa. They are here. UPES from Tehran. Nope. Okay. University of World Economy and Diplomacy. All right. Middlesex University of Dubai is here, and the Royal University for Women from Bahrain. All right. So a great group is here, and I'm going to welcome you again. But right now, as I used to say on the late night talk shows after they were warmed up, here's Robbie. We need to have the welcoming speakers come on up.
Yeah, go ahead and come up here for the stage. Mr. Ahmad Salman, you're up here. Dr. Mohammed. Great. Okay, well, since we're already here, we've done our introductions. In the interest of time, we'll just move right along to our opening remarks. I also just want to take a moment to give a round of applause for the few teams who weren't able to make it. Sometimes there are visa issues or other things too, so just a round of applause for those of us who tried to make it. I don't have remote access for those teams, so they'll be able to participate and be a part of the experience, even if we won't be able to see them here in person. So we're just have some opening remarks to welcome you to the meet at Pre-Moot from some of the organizers and folks who are donating their time and their energy to make sure y'all have the best experience that you can. So first up, Mr. Hamid, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you all at ADGM, Abu Dhabi's International Financial Center, on the occasion of the 15th Annual Middle East Pre-Moot. And I would like to start by extending my sincere appreciation to my colleague, Ms. Linda, the CEO of ADGM Courts, and her team for the dedication to make this collaboration with the Middle East Pre-Moot a success. I also wish to acknowledge our valued partner, the UAE University, of their continued support in fostering legal education in the region. The Middle East Pre-Moot plays a key role in advancing the study and practice of international commercial arbitration, enhancing advocacy standards, and preparing the next generation of legal professionals to navigate the evolving landscape of the international law. For example, ADGM took the responsibility in building capabilities to nurture the next generation of UAE national judges, as well as affording many aspiring UAE national lawyers to learn both English common law and the UAE civil laws. The Middle East Pre-Moot has reinforced Abu Dhabi's role as a regional hub for legal excellence by choosing ADGM as the permanent home for this prestigious convention. And ADGM offers a unique foundation for students, legal experts, and academia to connect and engage with top-tier law firms and professionals in the only jurisdiction in the Middle East that directly applies the English common law. ADGM is a home for more than 100 major international law firms, including Magic Circle firms such as Freshfields, Clifford Chance, US law firms such as White & Case, Morgan Lewis, and Splanding, to name a few. ADGM is also home to a number of leading regional firms and boutique specialist law firms with all manner of industry expertise. As a thriving hub for business interaction, ADGM provides a dynamic legal ecosystem where these firms play a critical role in helping ADGM advance its regulatory environment. At the heart of ADGM's legal infrastructure is the ADGM Dispute Resolution Hearing Center, a world-class, fully digitalized space for arbitration, hearings, and mediations. Moreover, the ADGM Academy, our knowledge and learning arm, partners with the leading institutions and industry experts in delivering world-class education programs and equipping professionals with the future-driven skills necessary to excel in today's legal environment. A great example of this new School of Law, which was created with the goal of providing high-quality education, legal education through enhancing professional competencies, skills, and knowledge development, creating dedicated programs, industry-recognized qualifications, awarding certifications, seminars, and workshops. The Academy mission aligns with the objective of this event, which is to bridge the gap between theoretical learning and practical experience, empower the next generation of legal professionals with the knowledge and skills to succeed in international arbitration and dispute resolution, and provide an ethical foundation to question and challenge decision judgments. This 5-day program is an invaluable opportunity for learning, networking, and professional growth. Ladies and gentlemen, your participation in this event is not just about a competition. It's about collaboration. It's about intellectual exchange and developing skills that will help you build your capabilities in your legal journey. And last, I wish you all an enriching and fulfilling event ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those remarks, and thank you again to ADGM as really an essential partner for hosting with these wonderful facilities. We're going to go to the other building later on today, and you'll see what the hearing rooms really look like when you're doing arbitration. It's just a great opportunity for us to do that, so thank you all for that. Next up, we have another one of our really essential partners, BCDR, who has hosted this event in the past and has also been a little bit of our background and IT engine and our scoring system and a lot of other sort of infrastructure here that you may not necessarily see, but are benefiting from, and they've been also really key partners for us, so please. Y'all didn't see, but he did actually have an impressive move just there, moving the keyboard.
All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Before I go into my opening remarks, I just wanted to follow up on what Professor Brand was speaking about earlier. It does feel like sort of on American Idol or something. You know, palms are sweaty, knees are heavy, arms, shoulders. I think you know the rest, right? So it's fine. It's normal. Don't worry about it. Whenever you feel like you're on the spotlight and you have to give a speech, public speaking, you're not on American Idol, not a million people are watching you, it's fine. Just relax, take a breath, do what you're there to do, right? So this is my first point. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير صدق الله العظيم. O humanity, indeed we created you from a male and female and made you into peoples and tribes so that you may get to know one another. Surely the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous among you. Allah is truly all-knowing, all-aware. So blessings and thanks to God first and foremost, for through His grace we are gathered today. In fact, not just today, but for the past 15 years, or for the 15th time running now. The list of people to thank is endless, and therefore I would like to summarize it with my utmost gratitude to them all. Everyone who helped create, organize, and make the Middle East Pre-Moot possible and help it reach where it is today. So whether you are here with us in this room today, or maybe watching live, or maybe in the future, these words are for you all. So I share my greatest and utmost gratitude and appreciation. As for those who are here now, in this present moment, I would like to thank you and I would like to ask you to remember and capture this spirit that I'm trying to share, the spirit of gratitude. Be thankful to God, to your parents, your family, your friends, teachers, tutors, coaches, and everyone who crosses your path. And last but not least, to yourself, because it is you who have put the long hours of study, commitment, and dedication to be here, and that's what matters. It matters because, unlike most, if not everything else in life, time is something we cannot retrieve. Without dwelling into the metaphysics and quantum realities or multiverses, I just want to remind everyone to be mindful of our fleeting presence. And that in the following week, let us do all that we can to make the most of it. We have 1 week here, let's make the most of it. Dear Mooties, you are embarking on a journey that is full of endless paths and possible futures. Your law degree is your compass. Therefore, utilize it to the utmost potential. Bring forth your talent and let it shine. Time and again, we say it is of the essence. So during this week, you'll be surrounded by such a wealth of experience, of wisdom. So make the most out of it. Imam Ali said, "Siluni qabla an tafqaduni." Imam Ali said, "Ask me before you lose me, or you miss me." I think miss me is nicer to translate. So take this chance to learn from all the practitioners you meet, your coaches, your mentors. We are all here to help support you becoming the best version of yourselves. That being said, I don't want to give you advice on technical aspects of being a legal practitioner. You can learn so much from everyone else here. I just want to leave you something to ponder. And I would like you to remember that every lawyer takes an oath to serve. And this is our main duty. Not to lose sight of that and to keep it within our perspective at all times, starting now, starting today. Remind yourself that character matters, integrity matters, humility matters, decency matters, kindness matters, morality matters, humanity matters. I'm going to ask you if you remember those. It's a quiz. Yes, winning also matters. Competition is a thrill, and we are here to challenge each other. But that doesn't mean winning at all costs. And the ends never justify the means. Do not let anyone persuade you otherwise. Finally, I just want you to ask yourself, why am I giving you this advice? Because our time is fleeting. Our lives are short. And life is too short to spend on self-glorification and being better than everyone else just for the sake of it. Focus on becoming better than you were yesterday. Don't take shortcuts. No stepping over others. No law of the jungle, dog eat dog world. Let's be better than that. So that when we move on, those who remain will remember us for what we have done for others before what we have achieved for ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Solomon, for those remarks. I love opening remarks that include comments about the metaverse and the law of the jungle. That's pretty great. Really getting creative in the morning, which is fantastic. Another wonderful partner and friend of the Pre-Moot. I know many of y'all have seen him before, and he's probably been your arbitrator at some point, or may be your arbitrator in the future. We have Dr. Muhammad from the UAE University.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'll try to keep it short because usually as professors we take a long time to talk and give lengthy speeches. So first of all, I would like to welcome you all to Abu Dhabi, to the United Arab Emirates, and to ADGM. So before we start, I'd like again to thank our hosts here, Abu Dhabi Global Market, ADGM, Mr. Hamid Mazrou'i, and the rest of his team for hosting this prestigious competition. ADGM have been a partner now for 3 years to this Moot competition, and they added a lot of things to us and to this competition. As well, I'd like to recognize also the CLDP and Pittsburgh University, Professor Bryant, Robbie, and the rest who have given us most of their knowledge, most of their skills in either drafting memos, teaching you students how to plead, and their role in this competition, as well as Bahrain Chamber of Dispute Resolution, is something that need to be recognized, because without them, without the initiative that the CLDP, Pittsburgh, and BCDR in starting this annual MENA-BIS Pre-Moot, we would not be here. So I'd like to thank them, and please give them a round of applause now. In addition, I'd like also to emphasize our strong commitment, the United Arab Emirates University's strong commitment to supporting this competition. As the academic partner, UAU is dedicated to providing an enriching environment that nurture legal knowledge, sharing and fostering critical thinking. So with that in mind, Robbie can distribute my email, my contact information, and also Safes, since he's one of our assistant coaches. We're here to support you whenever and at whatever time you need. In the UAE, we hold learning and education in the highest regards. As our founder, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan said, the foundation of future is based on the strength of our educational system. So you students are something that each nation are investing in. We certainly in the UAE are investing a lot in our new generation, in our students. one more thing, I want to keep this as short as possible. I'll end with one more quote from Sheikh Zayed. The true wealth of any nation lies in its people and in its educational and in its education that provides to them. So, by all means, take this opportunity that the UAE ADGM is providing for you as well as the Pre-Moot, and enriching and furthering your education. And one more thing that maybe our previous speakers have touched upon, this competition, the main focus of it is not just to win the competition. You are here to learn. So try to take this opportunity. There's no losers in this Pre-Moot. All of you, if you just gain some knowledge, some legal knowledge from this competition, that is enough for us. And with that, I'll just end my speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I think the emphasis on what we're going to learn this week is the important thing. We call it the mean of this Pre-Moot, but if you notice, of the 5 days that we're here in the Pre-Moot, more than half of them are really about training and education. We are here, as the Moot organizers would say, this Moot is a competition because it has to be. It's really about the legal education exercise, and that's all really what we care about. And our last speaker, I think, really embodies that. Professor Brand is a professor at the University of Pittsburgh. He was my Moot coach, as well as a Moot coach to the world and now to y'all. So we'll invite him to do his opening remarks. Professor Brand.
Thank you, Robbie. I want to add my words of welcome on behalf of the Center for International Legal Education at the University of Pittsburgh. We've been a part of this from the very beginning, and it's been, for me, one of the most rewarding aspects of my professional career. And as you can see, that hasn't been a short career yet. So, welcome. I also want to say thank you to the other co-sponsors here, because this is truly a cooperative process and a cooperative effort to put all of this together. There's been a lot of work done behind the scenes to help you engage in understanding two very important things, education and rule of law. And this brings that together in a way that I don't think anything else does. I believe that the Moot process is the single best legal education platform in the world, and you're a part of that now. I want to say thank you to the co-sponsors, to ADGM, the Dispute Resolution Hearing Center, and the Academy, who are such wonderful hosts and have done incredible work to prepare for this, to prepare for you, and to provide for everything you're going to need this week. And you'll see that through the wonderful facilities. We will be, as Robbie said, in the AGGM facilities, in hearing rooms where arbitrations take place, and your arbitrations will take place. I want to say thank you to UAE University, who's been one of the most consistent Middle East teams in the Pre-Moot, always here with a team. From the beginning, we've had teams that have come in and out, but they've been here all along. And I want to say special thank you to the Bahrain Chamber for Dispute Resolution, because they've been with us from the first of the 15 Pre-Moots and have been an incredibly important partner. They really got this off the ground. It began before the first Pre-Moot, and there was some scrambling we've had some scrambling on this one, because there's a missing logo up there, the Commercial Law Development Program of the U.S. Department of Commerce. I'm an American, but I'm not here speaking for the U.S. government, so I can say whatever I want to say. But we're going through some difficult times right now. The world is going through difficult times. We're lacking guidance. There are leaders who are not concerned about what you are involved in, and that's rule of law. But we, as a human species, will no longer exist if we do not function under the rule of law. And we cannot do that without lawyers. And you are going to be the generation that proves that it works. And this process is going to help you prove that it works. But I do want to acknowledge that much of the preparation that has gone into this has been done by the Commercial Law Development Program. It was that program that initiated the process here in the Middle East. It came actually out of, I came over with him in 2007, and that was 4 years before the first MENA Pre-Moot. And we were talking to people who look like me and older. And I said to them, I said, you know, if you really want to have an impact over the long term, talk to the students in the law schools, and work with them. And if you want to work with them, work with the VIS Pre-Moot, because that's something that works. And I think that has proved to be true. And I think you will come this week, I hope, to understand why that is true. You're not just going to be learning international commercial law. You're not going to just be learning international arbitration. You're going to be learning the skills and the elements of the rule of law that connect us all. Solomon's quotes from the Quran included a verse that is inscribed on the MENA Pre-Moot trophy, which is sitting in my office, by the way. But each year we put the name of the team that wins on that trophy. And I take liberties with interpretation, and I apologize for that, but basically it is, as I read it, God made of us many tribes so that we can learn to work together. That has two elements: diversity. And diversity is important, and we need to be proud of where we come from and who we are. But we need to do that in order to work together and bring all of the benefits of multiple cultures, multiple legal systems together to make the world a better place for everybody. And that's what we're engaged in here. And I think this platform, the VIS Moot, helps take us there. And I hope it is, if done right, it will be more work than anything you've ever done. Okay? But if done right, it will be one of the most rewarding, valuable experiences you've ever had. Okay? And that's education. That's what education should be. And so we're all going to work together. And I do this because I learn from you. I take all your good arguments back and prove them to a pit team, by the way. And so I'm a pretty selfish guy. See, I'm going to take that back and do that. But I do want to say again, thank you to everyone who's been involved in this. I did mention that the first MENA Pre-Moot was 2011. Some of you will remember there were a few things going on in the region in 2011. We had to move the Pre-Moot from Bahrain and held it in Vienna just before the moot competition. Because CLDP at the last minute, just this past week, had to pull out, we've had to scramble this time again. But if this process has taught us anything, it's taught us that we can work together, even in times that are difficult. And when there are interruptions to what we are doing, and we're going to do that. And so if you see glitches along the way this week, ignore them. It's all going to work, and it's going to be a wonderful process for all of us. So you're going to hear more from me than you want to hear. So I'm going to stop now, but simply say welcome and thank you to everyone who's helped put all of this together so that we can all learn from each other. Thank you.
Okay, well now it's time to get to the meat of what we're doing here. We're going to begin with a general problem analysis with Professor Brand. Thank you all for coming. I'm glad you won't have staged to be bored by us. Good for you. But we're going to start engaging with the program. So what I need is, raise your hand if you're a coach. Coaches, raise your hand. What took y'all so long? Okay, I need 2 volunteers to help me with microphones. Eva, not both of y'all. One of y'all, one more. Here we go, come on up, okay. Y'all can, okay.
What's happening?
This is an interactive exercise. We're doing this, okay. Good. Let me just start the last one. Oh, you know what, it's probably better for the room online.
I'm back. Smile. We're going to have a good time. We're going to learn a lot. I'm going to learn a lot. But we're going to dig right in to the process here. And I say we because this is going to be a discussion. This is not going to be me talking to you. I'm not here to impart knowledge and wisdom. I'm here to engage in the educational process. And so let me tell you one of my basic theories of education. And this fits with the US style of legal education, where we engage more in discussion and what we call sometimes Socratic method. I'm not here to lecture you. And the reason for that is that if this process works, we have what was scheduled for an hour and a half. It's going to be a little over an hour. Where each of us is at the beginning of that time should have changed by the end of that time, and we should understand the Pre-Moot problem and the law better. But I can't get you from here to there unless I know where you are at the beginning. And I don't know where you are at the beginning unless you help tell me that. So I need to hear from you, okay? Because what I want to say to you doesn't matter. And this is a very important lesson about the Pre-Moot and about arbitration. When you are counseled in arbitration, you go into the hearing, what you want to say doesn't matter. What's in your head doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what's in the head of the arbitrator and what award the arbitrator is going to write. And how do you get the arbitrator from the start to that point that you want them to get to unless you know where they are at the start? That means that you want questions from the arbitrators. It means you have to read the body language of the arbitrators, because if you're speaking about your position for your client, You need to know how they are responding to that. You've got to watch their eyes, you've got to watch their body, you've got to watch what they do, because if they're not asking questions, you have to pick up somewhere, because you have to try to get them. The only goal is not to finish your statement and have it be a remarkable, wonderful presentation. The goal is to get the right things written in the arbitral award. That's what your client is after, and you're representing your client. So you are there to understand and try to find out where the arbitrator is. You are there not to pound a position on them, but to help them solve a problem. So when you go in to present your argument, you've all watched American movies and television shows about courtrooms and stuff, and you've seen theatrical present, forget all of that stuff. In an arbitration, you're simply there to solve a problem. And so engage in the process in a deliberative, careful way that lets the arbitrators know that your purpose is to help them come to the right conclusion in a difficult problem. And the Pre-Moot problem is a difficult problem, isn't it? Let's get to the Pre-Moot problem. And you've all written 2 detailed memoranda. You've researched more than you want to, although not near as much as you'll continue to research until the end of the process in Vienna or Hong Kong if you're going there. And that process has to continue. You have to keep adding to your knowledge, to your understanding. Because the more you understand the problem, the more you understand that you don't understand all of the law that needs to be applied. And you need to find out more, and you need to deep down to get into deeper levels of understanding of the commentary, of the case law, of the texts, of the instruments that are being applied. So but that's all too much in the weeds. Let's stand back and let's think about the big picture. What's this problem about? Who can tell us? What is this problem about? Come on. Fundamentally, what is this about? Yeah.
Breach of contract. So there's another problem because we don't know the governing law.
Okay, breach of contract. How many of you are making arguments about breach of contract in the hearing? Okay, why not?
Because this phase of the arbitration does not deal with breach of contract. We're now disputing the governing law.
That's important to understand, is that sometimes you talk about bifurcated hearing process. This is an initial hearing. This is not the final hearing. This is an initial hearing to deal with questions of jurisdiction and applicable law and admission of evidence, right? The real important ones will come later, or could have come in mediation, and we're going to see more and learn more about mediation this week as well, because you cannot argue this case in arbitration unless you understand mediation better. So we're going to engage in a process to try to help understand mediation better as well. But what is this problem really about?
So I'm going to say, from the procedural aspect, how can a voluntary process like mediation become binding? So what are the conditions of that? And that's one of the problems.
Okay, that's going to help us think about mediation. But I would suggest there's something a little more fundamental that this problem is about. What is this problem all about?
If I may, I think the problem is about a broken relationship because the parties reach a stage where they can't even get together to mediate, and they're disputing certain terms and conditions, etc.
Breach of contract, broken relationships. Yeah, those are terms we use in dispute resolution, arbitration, litigation. What's this problem all about?
Ultimately, it's about formation of contracts and the formation of dispute resolutions.
Formation of contracts and formation of dispute resolution.
Yes.
Okay, tell me a little more about that. What do you mean formation of contract?
I mean, formation of contract in the sense that the dispute resolution is separate. So there's the issue of the applicability of the CISG, which we can get from the contract, and also the dispute resolution of the arbitration agreement is an issue because it wasn't written in the best way possible.
Let's explore that a little bit. Formation of contract. Now that's the starting point. The ending point is breach of contract, broken relationships, right? But let me ask you. We are engaged in a process where we're focusing on the lawyer's role in dispute resolution. Let me ask you this. What's the lawyer's role in formation of a contract? Yeah, what's the lawyer's role at the beginning instead of the end? You know, people tend to think, and the movies show us lawyers in the courtroom in the middle of disputes, and it's easy for a lot of people to get the impression that a lawyer's job is only to come in when people are angry at each other, right? But at the contract formation stage, are people angry at each other? No, they're happy because they're forming a relationship that might break down. And they, both sides expect to benefit from that relationship, right? Otherwise you don't enter into a contract. You enter into a contract so that both sides can get benefit, okay? What's the lawyer's role when you enter into a contract?
So I want to say that I think the problem really is about the interpretation of the parties' intentions, both in the procedural aspect and the merits. But I think the role of a good lawyer or a diligent lawyer would be to better clarify the intention in the first instance so that it is really apparent that what the parties really wanted, especially in the CISG applicability part. It is stated in the case that there would be a meeting between the lawyers of the both sides, but it didn't really happen. And I think the real issue in the merits part is because of that meeting getting cancelled and not being really clarified what the both parties wanted.
Okay, what the parties want. But there's a time element to that. We're looking for what the parties want, or we're looking for what is the intent of the parties at what time. At the time of formation of the contract, when we conclude the contract, right? But that's not, we're not arguing the case now, and we know that the party's intent now is divergent, right? But we have to always remember that the party's intent when the contract was formed, we hope, was coming together. We have a comment.
So in terms of the question of what's the lawyer's role, I think the lawyer's role for their own client is to make sure that in the drafting stage, that the contract avoids any ambiguity that can be then used against the client. So protecting their best interests and also keeping in mind the other parties' interests as well. So finding that common ground.
Stay with me for a moment. Avoiding ambiguity.
Yeah.
Is there ambiguity here?
Yes.
Where does the ambiguity arise?
So the ambiguity is whether the CISG was excluded or not. So there's conflict between whether it can be excluded since it wasn't expressly excluded through the choice of law clause.
And in my point of view, one of the things must be added to the problem is that we have to make a distinction between two parts. The first is contract itself, and the second, the articles in the contract that the parties hadn't anticipated in it. For example, party may leave some of the things, I mean rule of law, to the law, not itself to the contract. So we have to make distinction between these two. Some of the problematic points must be arised from the rule of law, not the contract.
Okay, what do you mean from the rule of law, not the contract? The contract doesn't provide any rules?
It seems to me that some soft law apply to the case, like IBA rules and taking of it with evidence, or whenever we are encounter with this problematic issue. For example, should we apply to the case of CISG or another rule of law, I mean unity law principle? These are kind of things left by the parties to the laws, not to the contract.
To the law, not to the contract. But what is the law of the contract? And comment up here.
Hello, I just wanted to mention that the contract is not about rules of law, it's about rules of intention. I wanted to say that we have to declare what's the party's intention want to approve and want to mention. For example, if the CISG is applicable to the contract or agreement, we have to find out if is really the party's intention to accept its application. They have to find their intention, not about their rules.
Okay. Party's intention. The party's intention comes in the words in the contract. That's the first place that we look to find party intent, because we're looking at what was their intent at the time the contract was formed, right?
Yes, so I just wanted to say on the ambiguity, the ambiguity I think is whether this is a sale of goods or whether it's a sale of services. So that's an issue that is not made very clear by the contract, and thus becomes an area of dispute. And I think I read a little bit about green hydrogen, and it is a very new technology, so I think it's a very interesting part of the problem, because I think remains somewhat an open question whether this is, if you just sell them a plant and that's considered a good, or if you sell them everything, all the training, all of the expertise that has to come into being able to run the plant. So I mean, I don't have an answer yet, but this to me is one of the main ambiguities in the contract.
In the international arbitration world, there are basically two types of international commercial arbitration. That's what we're engaged in here. And there's investor-state dispute resolution or arbitration. And I think for a lot of people, and when you begin to read this problem, you think, this isn't international commercial arbitration, this is investor-state. This is, there's a turnkey plant contract and sale of goods. What are the goods here? And the CISG only applies to goods, but we're in the weeds of the CISG in this problem, right? You've begun to get to where I would start in answering the question what this case is all about. I would answer it in 2 words. So anybody want to think about what that might be? And there have been comments that have come close to that.
Risk management?
Risk management, I like that. Okay, I'm gonna, I will give you homework at the end of this session for this evening, but I'm gonna give you some more homework. If you're interested, I've recently completed an article that puts together a lot of my thoughts about this stuff. And it's called The Laws of the Arbitration Agreement. And it's posted on some, have you used SSRN for your research? The Social Science Research Network, SSR. If you Google SSRN Ronald Brand, this is self-promotion here, perhaps. And you'll get to an article called The Laws of the Arbitration Agreement. But I have a part of that where I look at everything from a transaction planning perspective, and so thank you, Hillary. This is for allowing me to be put in a self-indulgent plug for reading my articles. But thank you. Okay, but here's, so the two words that I think this problem is all about. Go ahead.
The applicable law?
Applicable law. That's the second two-word combination this is all about. The first is contract drafting. The transactions lawyer, and this is where I have taught international business transactions for much longer than I have taught international commercial arbitration, okay? And if you think about it, I don't know what kind of lawyer you want to be. You may want to be the kind of lawyer you watch on television who's making arguments and trying to solve the problems. But lawyers should solve the problems from the start, not the end. This is a dispute that should never have existed. And lawyers should have prevented it from existing by drafting a better contract, by making clear the intent of the parties in words that mean the same thing to everybody who reads them. And that's why transactions lawyers, contract lawyers, have a much more difficult job than litigation lawyers and arbitration lawyers, because once the dispute has arisen, you know what the problem is, you know what the dispute is, you can find the applicable law, you can then argue for the result, or if you're the tribunal, you can determine the result. When you're drafting a contract, you have to engage in risk management. One word is important to every transactions lawyer, risk. And if you read that article, I explain how what you need to do is first identify the risk, and then you help your client either eliminate the risk, and sometimes you can do that. Not every risk is zero sum. Or you can reduce the risk, or if it's a zero sum risk and somebody has to take it on, you put it on the other party. That's your job in the contract drafting, to express the intent of the parties in a way that's clear to everybody who reads that contract. Now, what we have here is a problem that has arisen because the words in the contract are not clear and do not mean the same to everybody who reads the contract, right? And moreover, both the jurisdiction question, the dispute resolution clause, and the applicable law question, the choice of law clause, result from the same circumstance. And I would suggest that in part, that they result from good contract drafting. All right? So, and let me explain that. Who's involved in the jurisdiction? Who's focused on the jurisdiction question? Okay, microphone up here. Let's not think about how we argue the case, let's think about how in drafting the next contract we prevent this problem. How would you draft that next choice, the dispute resolution clause?
Okay, so generally when drafting a contract, a good lawyer must not be afraid to be very granular when it comes to the dispute resolution clause to avoid any misrepresentations of the contract. However,
What words would you change in the dispute resolution clause to solve the problem?
in this case, well, it would be different for claimant and respondent. However,
Well, would it be different for claimant or respondent? Now you're saying it would be different based on the position I want to take now. But and the respondent says we want to go to mediation first. Claimant says we don't want to go to mediation first. But when you draft that contract, do you know for your client which of those two positions you're going to want when a dispute arises? And this gets to understanding mediation. Yeah. More comment? Yeah. Pass the.
yeah, if I may ask, when it comes to the dispute resolution clause, even if it is very clear that, for example, the parties can resort to mediation, one of the parties may misuse or not follow the agreed upon procedures let's say okay.
Don't get into arguing the case. Get into drafting the contract.
Hi.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Hi there. I'd like to add, if we back into the question, which was what we do with this arbitration agreement. So I am, as a counsel, would add only if mediation fails or only if mediation is terminated, parties can refer to arbitration part, which is clear and sufficient for the parties to follow procedural order. And also, at the same time, I would put the choice of law clause, which clearly states the law governing the arbitration agreement. That is the suggestion that I can give.
So to add to that, the common intent of the parties at the time the contract was concluded was that arbitration would be a last resort. So in the dispute clause, I would at least add the phrase that mediation is a condition precedent to arbitration, and that failing it would not would void the jurisdiction of a tribunal.
Okay, so just a minute, but what I hear people saying is you put in words that we now understand. We're at the dispute stage, we're asking what did the parties intend by putting a mediation clause in and then an arbitration clause. And more specifically, we're asking, did they intend that there must be mediation before there is arbitration? And you can, and I'm going to be really interested in hearing your arguments. You can ask that in two different ways. Does that mean that there's no jurisdiction to arbitrate? Or does that mean there's jurisdiction to arbitrate, but it's not admissible yet until we go to mediation? And those are two different ways of looking at the same problem, right? We got a comment here.
So with regards to drafting the dispute resolution clause, I would propose adding a time frame for mediation. I think that would help a lot. So if the parties do not agree to mediate, let's say within 1 month, 2 months, then they would proceed to arbitration.
Okay, you'd put specific time limits in the process. And so what we're doing is starting to say, well, let's have a much longer dispute resolution clause, right? And clients seem to like fewer words, not more words, right? And there's an art to this process of contract drafting. Let's move for a moment to the choice of law clause, and let's reverse engineer. And this is what transactions lawyers, this is why what you're doing is preparing you to be a better contract drafter. It might be preparing you to be a better arbitration counsel, but it's also preparing, and this is why transactions lawyers who put the deal together must understand dispute resolution. And dispute resolution lawyers must understand contract drafting. You can't get away from that combination. And if you have a law firm that has the litigators and the arbitrators over here and the transactions lawyers over here and they have a wall between them, that's a bad law firm. All right? They're missing the important aspect of understanding the law across the relationship. The job of a lawyer should be the same as the law of a government, the job of somebody in government. It should be to make life better for everybody. The job of a lawyer is not to denigrate the other party. It's not to create a we-they understanding of the world. It's to create an us understanding of the world, so that we engage in relationships, including commercial relationships, that, yes, result in a profit for both parties, but make things better through relationships that last. Okay? And now there are two aspects. Let me ask once again. Let's reverse engineer the choice of law clause back to contract drafting. How would you redraft that clause?
Yes, I would focus on the party's intent at the conclusion of the contract.
And what was their intent at the conclusion? But now we have a debate over what that intent was. Yeah. What should it have been?
Yeah, what should that have been? So for example...
Change the words to Article 29. How would you do that?
Article 29. So I would say the equatorial law shall apply while excluding the CISG, for example. So I would
excluding the CISG.
Yeah, for example.
Explicitly.
Yeah, explicitly. So make everything clear.
Make everything clear. Or explicitly include if that's what you intend.
Yeah, yeah.
And the parties may have intended that. It's ambiguous from the record, right? And it's intentionally created in the record to be ambiguous, okay? Now, let me explain why I think the contract drafters did a good job, but not good enough. Okay, and so let's take each of those two, Article 29 and Article 30 of the PSA, and consider them separately. And we'll take them in the order they are. We'll take them in the reverse order that they're going to be argued in the case. But take the short one first, okay? This contract shall be governed by the law of Equatoriana. Now, we put a period there. Stop. What does that mean for this case? If there was a period after by the law of Equatoriana.
CISG applies.
Why?
Because Equatoriana is a signatory, it has ratified the CISG, and this is an international transaction, so it would automatically apply.
Okay, and you've all done deep research in the cases and commentary, and you all understand that when the CISG first came into effect, a lot of people would say, this contract shall be governed by the law of state X, means exclusion of the CISG, because the law of state X, not the CISG. But then, over time, the vast majority of cases and commentary say, wait a minute, the law of state X, if Article 11A tells us it's an international contract between parties in different states, and both parties are contracting states, the law of state X is the CISG, right? That's the logic. And that's good logic, and that's the majority rule, and that's what today those words mean. But here's the problem, and here's the problem that the contract drafters addressed well, but not well enough. The law of, and somebody said this case is all about applicable law, and that's exactly true. Here's why. This contract shall be governed by the law of state X means the whole law of state X, including state X rules of applicable law. And it's possible that the rules of private international law, of conflict of laws in state X, under this set of facts will lead you to the law of state, the substantive law of state Y. If you don't understand rules of conflicts of law, you don't understand international transaction planning or dispute resolution. Always, 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 the first question when you have a relationship, a legal relationship between two parties in different states, you have to ask what law applies. That's the starting point. You can't start anywhere else. And if you say this is governed by the law of state X, you start with the rules of applicable law, the conflicts of law rules in state X. And if they lead you to the law of state Y, that's probably not the intent of the parties in drafting that contract. So what did they do here? They said, this contract should be governed by the law of state X, comma, exclusive of the conflict of laws principles of state X, because now what you've said is this law is governed by the substantive law of state X. Forget the conflicts rules. We do not want to lead back to another state. That's good contract drafting. This clause was well drafted, but they solved a problem. But the solution had unintended consequences. Go ahead.
I have a question. What if the law that parties...
I don't know if we're recording this so people can use it, but so use the mic.
Got it. So my question is, what if the law that parties intended to choose for their contract, but this law applicable to the contract lacks sufficient protection for something like evidence taking?
Well, the lawyers at the time of drafting contract have to take that into account. Okay? Now, rules of evidence are really not a question of applicable law so much as they're a question of the two clauses that you as international lawyers should include in every contract. And they're in this contract. A choice of law clause and a choice of forum clause. Okay? And you want them to work together. And if you choose a forum clause, if you choose a court, rules of evidence come with the court. If you choose arbitration, what you come to understand is in the uncitral law of the law, there are no rules of evidence, or at least in the Finnish arbitration rules, there are no rules of evidence. You can incorporate by reference in the contract the IBA rules, but the parties didn't do that here. That's good contract drafting to do it in the dispute resolution clause, the choice of forum clause, if you choose arbitration. But let's go back to the choice of law clause for the moment. Okay? What are the unintended consequences of not putting a period after equatorial, but putting a comma and then adding exclusive of its choice of law principles?
This will lead to excluding Article 1 of the CISG.
Yeah. So, and here's the question that you have to argue, and this is so you see how the Pre-Moot problem puts you on the cutting edge of international contract drafting, the evolution of drafting a contract. If you become a transactions lawyer and work in a law firm that has done a lot of deals, they will have forms that you look to, and there will be a form choice of law clause, and you should keep working with your colleagues to update that and make it better. And the lawyers who drafted this one need to update this one and make it better as a result of the dispute resolution, the dispute that arose, right? So let's think back. How do we make it better? And what's the result? Well, one result of the fix that created unintended consequences is that you can read exclusion of conflict of laws principles to exclude Article 11A of the CISG, because Article 11A is a conflict, is an applicable law rule, and that's part of the conflict of laws principles. And if you exclude Article 11A because it's a conflict of laws principle, how do you get to the CISG? You get into the CISG only through Article 11A, or B, and that's not applicable here. So by excluding 11A, you've excluded the entire CISG. Is that the intent? Or was the intent just to exclude, or do we look at the CISG as a body of substantive contract law, period? And we've excluded only the general rules of private international law, conflict of laws, of Equatoriana, and that does not exclude the CISG. Oh, be careful. Comment?
So we have here, we can incorporate all the terms from the CISG in the contract, not applying the CISG. There is a derogation rule that I couldn't agree more that 11A should be met to apply the CISG, where there is no implicit inclusion of the CISG. But the problem is the conflict of law exclusion is the anti-renvoi clause that it can be intended to use the local domestic law of the Equatoriana or the law itself as Equatoriana, where CISG is incorporated in the law.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm going to give you all another homework assignment, and I don't know if you, because if you're arguing the applicable law matter for respondent, you say first, even if we apply 11A, we don't get there because of exclusions in Article 2 and Article 3, right? That take us out of the scope of the CISG. So the CISG doesn't apply anyway, even if the art law of Equatoriana applies and the intent was to include the CISG. This is not a sale of goods. That will take you out. You can't get into the CISG unless you have a sale of goods. But then the second part is, okay, even if it is a sale of goods, under Article 6, we are allowed to opt out, and we opted out. Either explicitly or implicitly, and it's pretty hard to argue explicitly, so you have to argue explicitly. Right, and so then you have to go to the intent of the parties. And where do you find the law on intent of the parties? Again, every time we have a legal question, we have to know what law governs that legal question. What law do we use to determine the intent of the parties?
Article 8.
Yeah, Article 8 and 9 of the CISG are designed to determine the intent of the parties. In other words, they are the rules for interpretation of the contract. But wait a minute, if the respondent is saying CISG doesn't apply, can the respondent use Article 8 to tell us how to interpret the contract?
Well, the CISG council opinion says you can go to exclude intention interpretation to interpret the party's intention under the Article 6 by using the Article 8. So 1, 2, 3.
So the CISG Council Advisory Opinion number?
Number 16, if I'm not mistaken.
What?
Number 16.
16, everybody's read that, right? You've used it in your memos. If you haven't, go take a look at it.
So all three states are signatories to the UNIDROIT principles. So that could be used by the respondent to interpret the conduct of the parties.
Yeah, now, the UNIDWA principles. That brings up a series of issues. We'll take.
Your question was whether a respondent can use the CAG itself, because claimant can claim that you're applying the CAG, so you are in the legal process you are applying the CAG, so it's applicable to the contract.
Well, yeah, and this whole problem requires that the respondent make kind of alternative arguments, but use the law that it says is not applicable. Think about that, and so you have to be coherent in how the two advocates together use the CISG, but at the same time state that it's not applicable to the substantive dispute that we will determine in the next hearing. But it is applicable to interpreting these two provisions of the contract, the choice of law and the choice of forum provisions. Now, and here's who's arguing for respondent on applicable law. Okay, and respondent is saying the CISG does not apply. And here's the question the lawyer has to ask whenever you as a lawyer are making any argument. If I accept your argument fully, 2 words, so what? The respondent, and I would suggest that a good arbitrator will begin, the first question the respondent counsel will get on oral argument is, on the applicable law issue is, so what? Why does it make a difference if we apply the CISG or not? Which means that you have to think about the issues that are not in this hearing, the breach questions. Because unless there's a difference between the CISG and the UNIDWA principles on the breach questions, the respondent's argument is pure garbage. Because if we get to the same place, this is a non-conflict conflict of laws. Okay, you only have a conflict of laws and a conflict of applicable law. If there's a conflict, if you apply, there's a different result that would come from applying the law of Equatoriana, including the CISG, or the law of Equatoriana, excluding the CISG. What's the conflict? If there's no conflict, we have no conflict of laws rules that we need to apply.
Here's the conflict. If we apply the CISG, there is no fundamental breach happened. So there will be consecutive claims from Green Hydro PLC saying that the respondent should finish the contract. If we apply, if we exclude the CISG under the term 7.3, respondent can terminate the contract for convenience.
Okay, yeah. So respondent has to be able to state very clearly why questions of termination for convenience change when you apply the CISG and when you don't apply the CISG. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Eva, you had a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, but what does our contract say about the termination? What did the parties specifically agree? And it doesn't connect to just what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Even if we apply the CISG
And
or
this
other
is
law.
where I'm going to cut that off right there. That question, yeah, let's because I want to get on to the other one. This is getting us deeper into the analysis and into the weeds, and we've got to get there. You've got to play out the argument every step, and here's where lawyers write sentences in memos, in contracts. You need to visualize the argument. Do a flow chart of the argument. You make this argument, and if the tribunal adopts it, where does that put you? And if they reject it, where does it put you? And then where do you go with the next step in that argument? You've got to be able to work all the possibilities down and come to the same result, no matter which fork in the road the arbitral tribunal takes on specific questions. And if a tribunal tells you basically, I'm not going to go where you're leading me, you have to say, well, even if you go with the other option, I win because here's where it plays out. And so do a flow chart, visualize the possibilities of the argument. Don't just write sentences on this. And sometimes some people think much better in a visualization process, and it's a good exercise to go through. Now let's go to the dispute resolution clause, which has a lot more words, Article 30 of the PSA. And claimant, of course, says, focuses on the arbitration. This dispute shall be finally settled by arbitration under the FAI rules. That's paraphrased, but that's basically what it says, right? But before that, there's a paragraph that says any dispute amongst the parties shall be submitted to mediation, shall. Right? And I should probably read that to you, but you know it better than I do. The point is that the mediation clause has mandatory language. Now, I said that both of these contracts, these clauses were evidence of good contract drafting. let me explain why. And we're going to have a session on mediation. We're going to have 2.5 hours of an explanation of mediation and a hypothetical mediation of this contract. And you cannot represent your client well in arbitration. We're going till 10:30, right? Okay. Cannot represent your client well in arbitration unless you understand mediation. Because I, as the arbitrator, am going to ask you a whole lot of questions about mediation. Because there's a clause that says the parties shall go to mediation first. Doesn't it have the word first in it? Okay. That doesn't mean after or during. It means first. Right? And the first rule of contract interpretation is plain meaning. Right? And can that not have plain meaning to everybody? First is not at the same time. First is not later. First is first. Right? So let's think about that. And here's why this is good drafting. Because it used to be that lawyers would just say to their client, you know what happens? Let's back up a little further here on the contract drafting. What happens is the business people get together. They say, okay, we want a turnkey operation. Here's the plant. Here's the price. Here's the delivery calendar. Here's how all of the business aspects. We agree, we're happy. Let's go out and celebrate and have dinner while our lawyers draft the contract. And the lawyers will always put in 2 clauses that the business people haven't discussed. The 2 clauses you need in every contract. A choice of law clause and a choice of forum clause. The rest of the contract is meaningless without those, and you don't know what to do for dispute resolution if you don't put in choice of forum clause. You want to control that process. You don't want to leave it to be determined ad hoc at the end when a dispute arises. And traditionally, because we have the New York Arbitration Convention, how many states in the world are party to the New York Arbitration Convention? All right, 172, thank you, all right. You all should be able to just, how many parties in the world are party to the 2005 Hague Convention on Choice of Court? 30? Yeah. And 27 of them, plus the EU, 28 of them are in Europe. and the EU is a contracting state, even though it doesn't have its own course for that. But, and here's the point. If you're a contract drafter, not every type of dispute should go to arbitration. there are arbitration theologians who will tell you that arbitration should replace the courts and we should get out of courts. We can't trust courts. We can trust arbitrators because we appoint them. There are CEOs who tell you the last time we went to arbitration, it was so expensive and time consuming and miserable, I will never want to do it again. Okay? Transactions lawyers have to understand the fundamental differences between litigation and arbitration, and have to understand what type of relationships can better be dealt with in litigation than in arbitration, or better dealt with in arbitration than litigation. And most international commercial arbitration lawyers will tell you that unless you have a problem, a case of $5, $10, $20 million, you shouldn't, it's a waste to go to arbitration. It's going to cost you more than it's worth. Courts can be less expensive. Arbitration was originally sold on less expensive, faster, more efficient, and confidential. And the confidentiality is an incredibly important one, and it works itself into this problem, right? But not every relationship and not every dispute is better resolved in arbitration. So the contract drafter today has to realize that as the Hague Convention becomes more widely ratified on choice of court, you'll have options here. If all you have is the New York Convention and nothing for circulation of judgments or circulation of choice of court agreements, the New York Convention, what's the official title to the New York Convention?
United Nations Convention on the Recognition and Enforcement of Foreign Arbitral Awards.
A terribly misleading name for a treaty. Because Article 2 of the New York Convention is the only article that really matters in this case. And it has nothing to do with recognition and enforcement of foreign arbitral awards, which is the title to the treaty. It has everything to do with recognition and enforcement of arbitration agreements. Okay? And so the protection the New York Convention gives is not just once you get the award, you can take it to 172 different states and have it enforced. Your agreement can be enforced in every one of those 172 states. That's the first step, and that's really important. So, but we have another treaty that matters for dispute resolution in this problem. What is it? What?
The Singapore Convention for
Yes, and what is the Singapore Convention?
It doesn't actually provide for enforcement, but it provides for collaboration, I believe, between states on enhancing the practice of mediation and promoting mediation between the courts and states.
And what's the official title to the Singapore? We call it the Singapore Convention, but what's the title to it?
I'm not a nerd, so.
Anybody? What's the title? What's the official title to the Singapore? Because as lawyers, we use short form names for things, but we have to know what we're referring to.
The United Nations Convention on International Settlement Agreements Resulting from Mediation.
Yes, international settlement agreements, right? Yeah, but the settlement agreements are not the agreement to go to mediation. They're the agreement you reach at the end of mediation. It's the equivalent of the arbitration award or the court judgment. It's the decision. But the decision in mediation is different from a court judgment or arbitral award in one really important way. What's that?
Voluntary.
Voluntary, or when we think about arbitration and jurisdiction, we use the word consent. It's consensual, unless the parties consent. And here, the claimant's argument is look, there's no way that we will voluntarily, and the respondent has already told us there's no way that they will voluntarily agree to a mediated settlement agreement that would circulate under the Singapore Convention if enough states had ratified it, and we're not there yet. Like the Hague Choice of Court Convention lags far behind the New York Arbitration Convention. But there is a recognition, and dispute settlement can occur in many ways, right? What's the first method of dispute settlement in any international commercial dispute? Negotiation. I mean, parties don't want to spend a lot of money on lawyers. They want the business people to get together and resolve the problem. That's consensual, right? But it differs from mediation. How? There's no third party involved. Okay? Mediation brings in a third party. Okay? And I mean, one of claimant's arguments is we skip mediation because we know if we go to mediation, it'll be unsuccessful and just waste our time and our money. So why do it? The tribunal has an obligation to be efficient and effective, right, in arbitration. So you, the tribunal, tell us that we don't have to go to mediation first. That's the claimant's kind of gut argument here. You all get into the weeds on the legal argument and why the text of the law leads you to the same or different result. But I think, and here's when we have the session on mediation, ask this question. When should we go to mediation? Should we only go to mediation when the parties think we can come to an agreement? Or is the real purpose of mediation is to bring in somebody who's expert at this when the parties have decided we just can't figure out how to come to agreement and we don't think we're going to come to agreement? Which of those is the purpose of mediation? It's the second. The purpose of mediation is to get parties to a consensual resolution when they think there's no way to get to a consensual resolution. So the idea that I can avoid mediation because I don't think it'll work is saying I can avoid mediation simply because I don't think it will do what it's supposed to do. What's the logic to that argument? Okay. And if you're the respondent, that's what you say to the arbitrators. You know, this is exactly the kind of situation that mediation was designed to deal with. And so now, the contract drafters did a good job. Because in earlier times in their law firm files, the choice of forum clause would have said, any dispute between the parties on any matter arising out of this transaction or the relationship shall be submitted to arbitration under the Finnish arbitration rules. I'll ignore him sometimes. And he understands that. No, we'll get there. It looks like 4 minutes to me, but I'll take 5. I get 5. But then the business people said, you know, we like to get to resolution without spending so much money on lawyers and so much time in arbitration. So, okay. And the Singapore Convention is coming along. So let's have mediation. So they draft a mediation clause and says, okay, we go to mediation, and if that fails, we go to arbitration. Okay. So we go from negotiation, which is consensual just between the parties, to mediation, which is consensual but with third-party assistance, to arbitration that's binding with third-party assistance and decision by the third party. Okay? We move through the spectrum of dispute resolution, and that's a very good thing. And so we draft the clause that takes us, negotiation, we know we can always do that, so we put in mediation, then we put in arbitration. in unintended consequences. Because what we didn't do in the drafting is say, can we go to arbitration without going to mediation first? And that's the question you have to address. But in order to address it, you must understand what happened with the contract drafting that led you to the problem. And you must be able to explain to the arbitrators that these words in the contract, both in the choice of law and choice of forum, demonstrated the drafters, or at least their lawyers, the parties, were trying to prevent problems that other language creates by adding language that took care of another problem but created a new one. And that's always the problem for contract drafters, right? You want to understand the problems that can arise in litigation. You want to prevent them by putting in language, but then you want to go back and say, once we've prevented that problem, have we prevented the unintended consequences of our rule of prevention? Make sense? And so what the directors of the moot and the drafters of the problem have done here is create for you a wonderful, wonderful educational problem that really, I think, is better for future contract drafters, because it forces you to deal with this evolution of the language of choice of law clause and the evolution of the language of choice of forum clause, because we better understand the problems that can arise and we put in words that prevent those problems, but now they've created new ones. And that's the way it's always going to be, right? And so it helps you as lawyers to understand it. But if you can first understand the contract drafting origins of the problem, and not just say, this is a terrible, we should fire the lawyer who drafted this contract because it led to this dispute, right? No, the first thing the litigator, the arbitrator should ask, the arbitration counsel should ask, how would I have drafted a better clause, right? You don't criticize what somebody else did unless you can offer options for doing better. And here is where it comes to the arbitration counsel. You offer options for interpreting the words that are there in the best way possible to move us forward in commercial relationships, not just to decide this dispute. We all know that arbitration awards are confidential unless the parties allow them to be disclosed. And when you do your research, you hope they allow them to be disclosed because you want to read them and apply them as precedent, right? And if you're an arbitrator, you want to write an award that the parties will allow to be disclosed so that others can cite your award and say, this is a wonderfully written award and has great policy analysis of why you come to the result you come to. And that's the ultimate argument for each of you to make. You can harp forever on the New York Convention, the UNCITRAL model law, the CISG, and the Unity Law principles, and the contract. And the contract is the law for the relationship. Okay, it's the rules of law, and we can talk about that later in the week. But in the end, this is such a well-drafted problem that the outcome depends on your ability to explain why it's simply right to agree with your client's position as a matter of policy for commercial relationships going forward in the world. Okay? So, pretty much on time. Close. So let's take that. And so here, I said at the beginning, our goal is to move from where we're thinking, our thinking is and our understanding is at the start, and make progress and feel like at the end that it's been worth the time. Has it been worth the time? Has it been helpful? If it's not helpful, tell me, and let's, okay? Because we all want to be, at the end of the week, way ahead of where we were at the start of the week, so that when we all get to Vienna, who's going to Vienna? Who's going to Hong Kong? Okay, so we got people going to both, but what we want to do is, and this is a cooperative process. We're all here to help each other become better, so that out of this group, we're going to have top teams in both Vienna and Hong Kong. And that all of you will be able to point to the people you meet here and celebrate their achievements in Vienna and Hong Kong. All right? So let's help each other. That's our job for the week. Thank you for the attention. Let's go out and have a break.
Thank you. Before we leave, so we're going to take a coffee break. It's all right out there for about 30 minutes. We're going to come back here at 11 o'clock, and we must be in the room, sitting in our chairs at 11 o'clock. We're going to move on to the commercial context. The program that we've got this week is specifically designed to take you from I've never argued, oh, we're not back here. Oh, we're moving, great. So we're going to have coffee here for about 15 minutes, and then we're going to drag you over to the other building, and that's all we'll have, our commercial context thing. So we set up the legal context, now we're going to do commercial context, and we're going to do our arguments.
Out that way, and then
We're going to do a group
over to the other building.
Can y'all swish in, stand up, and come together. Come together for a few photos. We're already here. Act like you like each other, it's fine.
We can do both. We can do both.
Close the aisle, yeah. There are no rules.
Okay, so first this way.
There we go. Yeah, get in. Come on. Make sure you can see you.
So I'm trying to catch this one. But I was wondering
Romeo and Francis. So 4 years.
Great, well done.
In case they need me,
We'll do that outside.
I will run also. I will just like wait here and I will. Bro, can we test the link? I will just take photo. Yeah, please. See you there.
Okay, thank you.
let's say